Welcome to the Creative and Account Podcast. This podcast was created to educate people about the world of advertising and branded content from the unique lens of two professionals working on opposite sides of the spectrum. I'm Frank Dale Arroyo, CEO and Creative Director at Straight Shot Post, a full-service post-production company that focuses on branded content. My co-host, Melissa Reisman, is an account director at BBDO, one of the largest and most well-respected agencies in the world. We hope to help you navigate through the challenges you'll face daily as you develop your career or business in this dynamic and quickly evolving field.
Hi, everybody. What's up? It's Melissa and Dale, and this is the Creative and Accounts Podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. I know Dale and I have had a pretty long day at the office. Not sure if you guys know this or if we've spoken about this in a previous pod, but we actually record these after work most days, so it's pretty late on our end. But
and weekends.
Oh, and weekends. Yeah, of course, weekends too. But we actually thought it would be helpful to, given a busy day where both Dale and I went through a couple of things. I think Dale went through a few more things on his end for his crazy day and night. So I think we can get started by Dale. Do you want to tell us about your day?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty specific, so I don't know how applicable it is to most people. However, our AE is working on one of our biggest clients, and it's the first time he's going through the process of prepping a project. And he kind of looked at me and was just like, hey, a lot of the time codes that they gave us in reference to some of the clips they need, they're kind of wrong. How does that happen? And I just looked at him and with Kat, who edits most of this stuff, I said, brother, I'm going to tell you right now, it happens because of human error. Most likely. That's literally, I would say 99 out of the 100 problems that occur. I don't know if you agree, Melissa. It's human error. And then there's the few things that are out of your control.
Yep.
Like the weather or actors dropping or locations dropping. But most of the time somebody just made a mistake. And that's why, at least at my company, we're super hardcore about checks and balances and double checking and triple checking. And I find that to be for sure one of the biggest problems that the young people have that come in. They just prioritize speed for whatever reason. And I have to scream it at them 1,000 times. Safety, stability, speed, in that order. That's the order. And they seem to not understand, just how grave errors like that end up being. And I do run a small boutique post house here, and essentially the chain of events. I just had to say that because that's how the day started. Human error. We're in the middle of a heat wave here in New York, and we live in Brooklyn. And during lunch, the kitchen, which is in our main office, it started with just a microwave. The microwave fuse broke. Okay. So I was like, okay, someone was trying to heat up their food. I came down and I opened up the breaker box and said, okay, guys, in order to get this back up, I'm not 100% sure yet what breaker's on what. So save everything you're doing and shut it all down. And I even said, go into my office, shut down my computer. And everything was shut down, which they were very it's funny. Some people were like, oh, why do we have to do this? I was like, bro, because it can go wrong when you just turn the power off on electronics. Oh, man, it is too soon. It hurts so bad. So I said, okay, here we go. Flipping the breaker off. Boom. It shuts off half of the basement. I was like, oh, I guess maybe, we got to do the other breaker. Boom. Flip the other breaker. The whole basement goes off. First thing that was really important was that I noticed that a lot of shit is on one circuit, which is just no bueno to begin with. A lot, unfortunately. But so we're like, okay, maybe we got to reroute some stuff. Boom, flip the power back on. Toaster oven works again. The computers start to turn on, and then we're chilling. And then I'm looking at them like, hey, like 10 minutes passed. I'm like, why haven't you guys gotten back like to work, you know? And then they're like, oh, you know, I can't get on the server. And then it dawned on me that I had them shut everything down, but completely forgot because our server's hidden away to shut the damn server down, which is the most important machine in the office. I was like, oh, shit, I guess I got to go and turn the server on, my bad, you know, crawl under all the shit, get through all the wires. Only to discover that it was just bricked. It was not turning on. And my heart immediately sank. But, you know, you got to keep it cool. I came out from underneath all of that. I looked up, and there was no keep. Everybody was staring at me like, you know, because they heard no beeps, the same sounds they're used to hearing when the server goes on. And then just this immediate, like every single thing that was happening in the day, I don't know. I think it's kind of beautiful, even though it's so painful, but like the focus, like everybody was just like trying to figure out what they can do to help. And I mean, that's a great sign because I have an amazing team of people that care. But, you know, obviously they're staring at me kind of waiting for me to tell them what to do, given that we kind of are starting to realize, and they didn't know the severity of it. So I had to go and do a couple of quick tests and then quickly realize, nah, she deaded. She gone. She's so gone. And then it was real. And the problem is that right now there's like a giant shortage of computer parts too. So the first thing that came to mind was, oh my God, I don't know when we can get even a replacement. And then and like all of the thoughts started rushing in. Oh my God, this thing's going to be down minimum of a week. I don't know if the data is even corrupted. Like I'm going to have to figure out if I can migrate it. And all these thoughts started flashing through my head. And to them, you know, I'm just standing there like this the whole. Like, and it's just like thousands of thoughts through my head. Like I need to figure out what to do, and they're just seeing like.
It's like a movie.
I call it my mind palace. Have you ever seen Sherlock? Or like go into
Nice.
my mind palace. That's yeah. Essentially, you know, I think when those kind of problems happen, I'm sure you've had crises
Yep.
happen to you before. I personally think the best thing to do immediately is actually nothing. Like 5 minutes of peace so that you can actually think straight, because I think one of the most dangerous things you can do is run off of pure gut and emotion. At least, you know, when it comes to something, especially when it's technical and you don't like, I don't really know that much about server maintenance, right? So luckily they know that too, and they just gave me my space to figure it out. But like, I do think that most of the time when you're on set or when you're having a crisis, people tend to just start flailing around, right?
Yep. It depends who is with you and if they keep their cool with you, or they just keep asking you questions and they're like, so what do you think we should do? So what's going to happen? And then you have to start being the one that, you know, kind of starts problem solving. I feel like it's funny, you know, you start problem solving immediately when the crisis happened, which makes you a really great manager and someone to look up to and a great boss, which is what you should be doing. And in my role, I do the same every single day. There's always something that goes wrong. So we're so quick to react to things like that. But I think what hurt the most is the fact that it happened, unfortunately, on your watch. But I feel like,
on my watch, like thank you for the kind words. Let's just be frank. I broke the server.
All right.
The owner of the company that screams safety, stability, speed. I scream it every day, and I tried. Oh my God, and just failed so miserably. And I mean, I talk about my own error and mistakes all the time. So it's not like, you know, it's not like, oh, the mighty have fallen kind of a thing. No, they all know I'm a monkey too. I say it. And honestly, I think it's the best example they could possibly get because I'm very safe. Yet, even with all of the precautions I take, happens, you know.
Totally. I mean, regardless of how many years that we've been in the industry and how much we know what to do, stuff is still going to go wrong and it's going to be our fault. But like, that's part of like a job. I feel like you're not going to do everything right 24/7. There's going to be mistakes, but you learn from them and that's how you keep growing and being better. So I feel like at the end of the day, Dale, like I know as much as this is dawning on you and you had like a crappy day, like this is never going to probably happen again to you because you've learned from it and you're going to be like, everyone in here needs to make sure that that server is also shut off. You're never going to
that's the thing, like this specific thing.
Yeah.
You know, is burned into my brain and body. It's a lot like food poisoning, you know, when you get food poisoning and then you see that food again, your body does some shit before you do, you know, even if it's fine. It's like I can't look at, you know, pasta with sausage in it, specifically spicy Italian sausage. I can't, you know, you're like, okay, brother, it's okay, man. Some shit clearly went down.
Yeah.
You know, like my uncle Josh, his is 99 bananas.
Why?
I think that was it. Food poisoning, alcohol poisoning, the both of who knows. Yeah, man. So it was pretty rough. What I want to just say is more of an appreciation to the lovely individuals that I've been collecting at this company. Brian, Kat, Sophie, Jake, they kept a really cool head about it. I mean, I could tell that people were obviously uncomfortable, but it was very simple. They were patient with me and then just, you know, what do you need me to do? You know, and immediately I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Get the local drives, yada, yada, yada. Let's go through, call Hunter. He's our project manager. Go through every project. I need to know what was on the server that's not backed up on drives. Boom, 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 down the list, you know? And, you know, and the thing that I try to sort of remind them in that moment is basically it's like, just do your job. Just focus on the task that is at hand in front of you, and then let me do my job, which is to worry about everything else. Do not, you know, we talk about empathy here all the time. I'm like, you understand what I'm going through? Do not feel it. Okay? Keep the feelings out of it and stay focused on the thing. And I can see it's hard for them. But they were like, okay, I'm putting the headphones back on. I'm going local, and I'm going to keep trying to just finish what I need. And it's amazing because we've talked so much about problems. So, like, I'm so proud to see how they've grown because I know that in the beginning it would have been very different. And I know that this would be definitely one of the benefits of not being remote, for example, which I guess we should just share. Like, we're all vaccinated in my company, so we've been here for the past month, no masks. Kind of odd. It took a little bit to get used to, but yeah, it was very much like, okay, this is what I could do. I can download these assets from frame.io, what we used to collaborate. I'll get those just to finish up these notes, Band-Aid fix. Once this thing's back up, you know, we'll sort of do the long-term fix, readjusting schedules. Like, people were just on it. And then I guess the one thing that I think is important, I don't know, Melissa, I'd like to really hear your opinion on this. I am of the opinion that you should always be operating what I say as if. So don't worry if the server gets fixed. You're operating as if the worst case scenario is happening and we're just in preparation for that thing. And then if it's a waste of time, like, first of all, it's just not a waste of time because you got to hedge. Hedging is the most important thing. Safety, stability, all that stuff, like I've been saying. But I don't know if you find that, because I do have some people that were maybe a little bit more frustrated, like, but what if it starts working? And then I'm like, that's great. Then we rejoice. What if it doesn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, then it's going to be worse because then they're going to be like, oh, it's going to get back up there and not think if it doesn't, what would you do? So I agree. I think if you give them a worst case scenario and you work under those parameters, and then as soon as it actually does get back, which, by the way, spoiler alert.
My things are looking okay. I am always optimistic, but, you know, to just say what we ended up deciding to do is we very quickly started to brainstorm. And this is more about, in general, problem solving in general. the first thing you have to do is figure out what the exact problem is. Okay. A lot of people, it'll be misdiagnosis, and that's when things can get scary. So obviously the server wasn't working. Why wasn't the server working? Very different if it's the drives that were corrupted or if it was the computer, the server box itself, or maybe it was a power issue going to the wall. So you kind of, once I did that somewhat annoying work to try different things. Oh, is it the cable? Oh, is it this? Oh, is it that? Calling them up, making sure the most likely scenario is that the motherboard is fried, which I've done before. So, and then once we knew that, then I said, okay, these are going to be our options. Okay. Now that we know that, and I was like, Sophie, you need to go and call every electronics store in the city and figure out if they have this model of server. Because if they do, most of the time you should be able to migrate from one to the other without major issues. We take the drives out, we put the drives back in the same order. Its system recognizes it all and picks it back up. So she went off to do that. The other thing was, well, let's call and figure out how fast we can get a replacement, like from Amazon or something, just in case they don't have it in the city. So that was somebody else was sent on that. Third was, all right, well, let me just buy one, even if it, like, just to be safe and know it's coming, even if it's going to take a month, to know that I have that in place and like kind of just have all these checks and balances. What ended up happening was through all of their very diligent and quick work, I bet the model numbers burnt into their brain. TVS, it's the TVS 872 XT. So it's like, that's all I heard her say. Hi, I'm Sophie. Do you have the TVS 872? Like, boom, boom, down the line. Essentially, what happened is that model, nobody has that. Okay, which is fine. And so then I said, and then we went and did the research to see what was compatible in terms of migration. And at the end of the day, they were like, do you have any 8-bay QNAP servers available? Period. And then literally called up B&H, Adorama, friggin' OWC, anywhere that we could find that might carry it, Best Buy, and said, okay, what model? Give me the model numbers of the ones that you have in the store. This is exactly what happened. I need the model numbers of the ones that you have in the store now. And then they wrote them all down, and then we went through the compatibility thing on the QNAP website and found, B&H has literally one. It's called the HX88 or some shit. The H1288X. And that was the only one. And I said, the guy was like, would you like me to hold it? I was like, yes, sir. I'm going to call you back as soon as I know it's compatible. And we're going to have somebody come pick it up right now. I called back. This was the scariest part of the day. I called the guy. I said, yo, we're ready. Let's buy this. He goes, oh, sir, I see there's only one in the system. I'm going to have to check because a lot of times when there's only one, there tends to be an error. And it's probably not really there. And I was like, oh. Everybody in the room was just like, are you kidding me? After all of this, we patiently wait, literally on the phone with this guy for 8 minutes. Very good at his job. Very stern, though. He was like, sir, I understand that you are under stress, but you must wait until this guy at the and I was like, I understand, sir. I'm here. We're just like quiet and patient. So kudos to B&H. You guys got great customer service. This guy, we waited it out, and he was like, okay, I can see in the system that he's searching. It was like, I swear to you, I was
You're getting like a play-by-play.
He's like, I see that he's searching, and then we were just sitting there waiting, sweating. And he's like, okay, I see that he's scanning it. Literally, and then he's like, okay, sir, I can take your credit card information. And I was like, we were like, okay. The scariest thing is that we didn't know if it was really going to work. Okay? That's the whole thing. Like, we did our best, but realistically, until you plug it all in. And plugging it all in was actually a giant pain in the butt. And I got to respect my teams who stayed late with me. They didn't even have to stay late. They stayed late for just emotional support. So, it was definitely a day to remember. And if my boy Kyle Doris, he's the head of tech at Vayner, if he ever hears this shit, there was the day that the server went down at VaynerMedia, and everybody had that same panic. And I just remember sitting there, and everybody's like, why are you smiling? And I was like, this is the day. This is the day Kyle's been waiting for. Y'all are going to see that, this is it.
Yeah.
This is, Jordan game 6. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is when this is what he was there for. And I was like, man, I wish he was here right now, because I'm sure he would tell me what's going on. But yeah, I guess it just goes to show you, like, if you keep a calm head and if you run through all your options and if you isolate the problem, like, you will at least come to an answer, do the things that you can to possibly solve it, and then respect that sometimes it ain't going to work no matter how hard you try. And so, yes, luckily, the migration looks like it's going okay. And now I have to go through all the painful side of rerouting all the cables to make sure that everybody's on it tomorrow again. So it'll be quite a long night for me. But, what did we lose? A couple of hours? This is the importance. I mean, I don't have to go into the importance of backing stuff up and all the double and triple checking all of the stuff we do. That's why ultimately I was only panicked about just genuinely losing a couple of hours or days of work. But there really wasn't any critical danger. Literally, that server was just backed up to a drive 3 months ago. And all of the clients, give us stuff on drives. The only clients that were in jeopardy were ones that uploaded footage to us. And, they were kind of being cheap and didn't want to back stuff up to a drive. And we were like, okay, we don't recommend this. Luckily, all the deadlines were done. We're not like we're actually a little slow we were super heavy the last 3 months, and things calmed down. And it's a long weekend, and nobody's, they're already, as maybe you want to talk about your media agency friends. They're taking off Friday and Monday, which we're taking off Monday. I think most people are, but
and Tuesday.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I know.
I need to hear from you, man. I need to know, because the thing is, obviously, when you're dealing with tech, it can always get, people kind of panic because they don't know tech. You got to share with me, what is the most catastrophic thing that's happened on set, at the office? Not COVID. Don't say COVID. That don't count. Okay, that's not fair. Obviously, like, when that happened, everybody was panicking, but something must have went,
I mean, I've had bad scenarios, but I'll be honest, I've just blocked them in the back of my head to never remember them again. Especially if it's something that is so bad. I mean, all
right, okay, wait. Let me make it more specific. Okay?
Yeah.
Because I admitted it. I broke the server. That was my mistake.
Mm-hmm.
What is the biggest mistake that you've made?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a great question. I'm trying to think, what's the biggest mistake I've made? It could be just something as like simple as like not knowing that a live due date was supposed to be a certain day, and like we're delayed because of me, or it could be like some finance issue if something didn't get solved or processed. Like, you don't realize it's the little details that can get you. So I feel like it's not necessarily as big as like a server going down. Like, that is a big issue. Mine, it could be a single detail that you did not realize and you forgot it, and it has such huge consequences. But at the end of the day, it was something that I learned from and something that I'll never forget. I feel like after, something like a detail, I feel like I don't sweat the like, I literally make sure I have everything outlined. I'm crazy detail orientated when it comes to work. So I can't remember the exact moment, but I do know it has happened. Like, it's like either I missed a date, or it was like a finance thing if I didn't process something and someone wasn't paid, or, production company wasn't paid on time because we didn't have money in-house, which is something that's so urgent on our end, which I've been pushing my team to do, is ensure that we get startup funds so we have money in-house to pay vendors. because there have been instances where production vendors don't get paid before the shoot. They could risk wanting to like shut the shoot down. So that's happened before, not necessarily shutting the shoot down, but the instance of someone not getting paid and almost threatening. So we had to deal with that scenario on the fly on the back end. So yeah, I mean, I've had my fair share, whether it's like a small detail, finance related, money again.
What about like
things.
interpersonal stuff? Have you ever, gotten drunk at the Christmas party, might have said something stupid, or or had any awkward interactions where it's more something that you're like, damn, I should have never said, like, or just I should have known better to talk about. I don't know. That kind of stuff happens a lot in offices, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things, which I think you know about me, is I'm pretty much an open book, and I try to not let things get under my skin. So I've definitely embarrassed myself at holiday parties before, and I just like, I don't really care. I don't know. I don't think I've done anything so bad.
Hey, this is really important. Yeah, give an example, but then
all right.
You should explain that, because that's the whole thing is, right? People are terrified to make mistakes. And at the end of the day, you just said it, right? Like, it's not as bad as you think, right? If you have good intentions and you're a good person, let's not, obviously some mistakes,
Yeah, I'm not saying you should get drunk so one of the holiday parties I was at, someone got drunk, so drunk they had to get rushed to the hospital. That was not me. But that's bad. Like, that's something you don't want people to remember.
Not recommended.
Yeah, don't recommend that. But I had a great time at a holiday party where I was dancing on the dance floor, and it was like a whole circle, and people like separate themselves. You've been in that instance where it's just one person that's in the middle dancing. Yeah, I was in the middle because I like to dance. It was a good song. But then people started getting their phones out and like capturing it, and then someone sends it to me later, and I'm like, crap, that's embarrassing. But it didn't end up anywhere. It's not like I did anything so bad. It was just me being myself, maybe with a few drinks, but it was just me dancing in the middle of the dance floor. It wasn't something that, someone's going to be like, well, she danced and was happy at the holiday party. She's a terrible person. So I don't know. It really depends on what you do, but yeah, I've done stuff like that, but I don't know. I feel like,
what would you say are some of the most common mistakes that you do see? Obviously, outside of the, it sounds like a lot of details with accounting and financing. I can understand how, that can get lost in the shuffle. What does BBDO do to prevent mistakes? We have our systems, but I'm curious, is there a lot of checks and balances in your arena, or is it just a hard training? How do you guys mitigate error? And what do you think are the most common mistakes that get made?
I mean, it depends on where, first of all, BBDO isn't only just like account. There's strategists, there's creatives, there's production. So I feel like everyone probably manages their own way of dealing with problems differently. For myself, an account, I feel like the biggest thing of what we learned is just paying attention to detail and triple checking things, almost like what you talked about, Dale. So I feel like that is something that I try to ingrain in everyone that I work with and who works underneath me, because I've dealt with that. And I know it might not seem like a lot, but it really is those small details that kill you. And you just might not realize, I forgot to like write something down one day that I was supposed to do, and then it's like 2 weeks later and you never did it and it's late. It's something so small, which if you work in account management, that is your job, to sweat every single detail, to write everything down, to keep track of everything. It is a tough job, but if you're one of those people that likes to manage every aspect of the job, and that's one of the parts of it.
Yeah, I was just curious about, because I'm trying to develop, this is how we problem solve here. Take the step back. Make sure your emotions don't get the best of you. Isolate the actual problem. Make sure you're not misdiagnosing. And then one by one, there's not really that much other way to do it. One by one, trial and error. You got to figure out until you find out what the problem is, because obviously with what we do, there's so many moving parts. Same with you. The thing that I'm curious about is your parts are mostly people. Our parts are people, but also the tech. If the computer doesn't turn on, there's so many reasons why that could happen. And until you isolate the correct reason, you can go out and buy a whole new computer that may have been completely unnecessary, for example, right? So that's sort of, I'm just curious if you guys have any of those kind of things where they're like, if you make a mistake, like talk to your boss, or, if there's any sort of system for what happens when you make a mistake. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but look, I know that this is how it works here. Most of the mistakes are just human error. At least we work with tech. Yeah, some things are out of our control. Some days the internet's down. Some days we're in the middle of a heat wave and funky stuff happens with electricity, or you're going to shoot and it rains on you, and I understand that. But I would say most of the time, human error is the cause of most of this stuff.
Yeah. No, really, it is human error that is the cause of it. And also just not sometimes triple checking something before it goes out.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, it's like really the majority of the errors that happen are really that. It's tricky to say because I feel like, I've been at BBDO for 6 years, so I'm trying to remember back from when I first started if there's anything in particular. But I know on our team, what we have implemented, like, for example, last week, or it was 2 weeks ago, we asked one of our interns to send out the competitor report internally to our team because we wanted to get her to start emailing more. One of the biggest things that I keep saying is trying to, nail your email writing, because it's so important in everything that you do is to write good emails. So I told our team.
Listeners would have definitely heard that one before, and I'm sure they're going to hear it again and again and again. But communication, right, being the key, I think in most fields, or in all fields really, in life in general, communication's key. But I feel you.
Yeah. So we had our intern, she was supposed to send it out just our team. She ended up sending it out to our clients instead, and our team, the whole
the
thing.
the competitors.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
But they also she didn't attach it. So it was just an empty, or she did attach it, but it didn't have like all the details in it yet. Something centrally, I was about to respond, and our client actually just sent a one-off being like, hey, like, this is good. Doesn't have this. Like, she was on it. And it's fine. It's human error, but it's something that, I try to tell our team. And obviously we wouldn't want our intern to, email clients directly. It's like her first, email I think she sent out, and it was an accident. It was just she accidentally forgot to remove the people that, are our clients, and that happens, but it's not going to like make or break anything. It was something so minute and small, and we ended up sending it the next day.
I'm curious because how did that intern feel though?
I'm sure she felt absolutely terrible. I didn't speak to her one-on-one about it. I know our team did, but I think at the end of the day, it's a learning. Like, especially as you're an intern, or if you're just starting out in an entry-level role, or if you're looking to go into an entry-level role, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make a lot of them, and you should. I feel like you can't tell someone they shouldn't make mistakes because you won't end up learning. I feel like
that is I think just such a unnecessary and, I don't know, man, toxic amount of pressure to put on somebody. Because it's impossible, right?
Yeah, it really is. And that's why, to your point, Dale, I know you mentioned it at the beginning, a lot of people on your team just try to get things done really fast. I think it's because they want to tout that they got it done. They want to move to the next one. But it's not about that. And you'll start to learn that once you're a bit further along in your career. It's really about nailing it and showing how much you put into it and how perfect it is, perfecting it, and then moving on to the next one. Because when you start out, you want to just show your boss, look what I can do. I got it done really fast. It's not about that. It's about doing it the right way, doing it correctly, and then sending it out when it looks great. It's not about the speed.
I love that you're taking it here because, like I mentioned earlier, like we do have a hard set rule: safety, stability, speed. We care about them all, of course, but genuinely, like that is the order it must happen in. And in our industry, in the narrative side, I don't know if you remember the story about Sarah Jones. She was first AC on an independent film set. They were shooting out on train tracks. It was for a Robert Altman feature film, I believe, is a biopic. Or the Allman Brothers. I don't remember. Some bands biopic, but they were shooting out in the woods on this train tracks, and it was a dream sequence. I think there was a bed on the tracks, and I don't want to, I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but essentially they thought that there would be no trains coming that day. And unfortunately, a train did come, and a young girl did die, and another one was severely injured. And it kind of set up a whole very important chain of events in our industry that led around things like safety and sort of the kind of sacrifices and this really stupid things we do, quote unquote, in the name of art. That totally comes at the sacrifice of people's health, which of course is so silly once you say it out loud, right? It's like so obnoxiously obvious, the right way to do things. And I had already had, luckily was not personally involved, but, I went to NYU, Tisch, and the class of 2010. And I believe it was 2008, 2009. I think it might have been 2009. But and anyone who has been to or is at NYU, they hear this story. There was a thesis set, undergrad, that was set in Georgia, and they were shooting at night. And sorry to get heavy, but this shit is real. They're shooting at night, and basically they had a cherry picker going on, and they thought, again, maybe not double, triple checking, or just what tends to normally happen is if you don't stay diligent, then you just get lax. So they had, I think, some electrician, some older electrician on set who said, oh, these are phone lines. Okay. They were not phone lines. They were power lines.
Oh,
and
God.
The moment that this cherry picker with this big HMI, which is a gigantic light that's supposed to mimic the moon, so a very big light, touches these power lines that are in the middle of nowhere that are not properly covered, all of that electricity shoots down through the cherry picker into the generator and explodes throughout the whole set. And yet again, a young kid died immediately. And one of my good friends, I won't name names or anything like that, but one of my friends was also very badly injured. I think he was put in a coma, knocked out for 3 days, had to get skin graft surgery.
Oh my gosh.
And I will never, ever forget when he said, man, what saved my life, safety, stability, speed, was that he had proper set gear. He was just holding an extension cord. He had the proper heat resistant gloves, and he had steel-toed Timberland boots, and he still had to get, he was very badly injured.
Wow.
And he showed me on the side of his boot a tiny little pinhole. And he kept those boots. I don't know if he still has them, but he said that's where the electricity left my body. That pinhole came out, went into the ground. So
that's insane.
I don't know why it takes stuff like that to make us change or to make us sort of gain a new perspective. I think it's because for every one of those, there's there's 1,000 also of these, we're famous, we're cool, we're successful, and we do crazy shit type of stories too. But in the real world, man, that's the stuff that matters. And I know I'm taking it to extremes here, but we are talking very simply about mistakes in this episode, how to prevent basic things like that, just a little bit of thoughtfulness tends to solve the problem. And so this intern was probably just, again, focusing so much on just writing the email, of course, and all the other things she's learning at the company, and just made a total, didn't dot the T's, cross the I's, a little arithmetic error, and sort of sent this thing preemptively or without thinking too much about it. I mean, I certainly deal with that stuff all the time. And how many people do you work with on your team?
There's 8 people on our team in total, including me, and then we have 2 interns, so group of 10.
And where do you fall in terms of the leadership?
So we have an EVP at the very top, then we have VP account director, and then we have myself. So third from the top.
So you're in a leadership position for sure. What has your experiences been working with the people under you, working with these interns? What are the things that you see, because I have my set. Oddly enough, every semester is similar stuff. We're talking right now about this prioritization of speed that tends to happen when you're young, this eagerness to do well, to prove yourself. I'm curious, do you see that also? What other things are you seeing in sort of the younger people trying to get their foot through the door, or even just the people that are underneath you? What kind of mistakes do you think are the ones that tend to get made off the bat?
Well, I can discuss something that happened with someone who's no longer on our team, but there were a few instances where, someone didn't follow up on a project and it just sat for weeks, and then we realized that he wasn't moving it and it was supposed to go live in a few days. And I immediately took fault for it, just given the fact I oversee him, and I thought he was owning it, and he's been on the team a decent amount of time, and he said he's got it. So, and he would give updates, we have status every day. He would give updates that it's moving, but little did I know I wasn't checking in on him enough to make sure that it was moving, and it wasn't moving at all. And he was just, or it was moving, but at way too slow of a speed, knowing that the live date was coming up way too soon. And, I managed up to my boss, and I was like, hey, this is the scenario that's happening. This is supposed to go, live X date. It hasn't moved as much as it should. I'm taking responsibilities into my own hands. I just wanted to give you a heads up of what's happening in case for some reason it trickles down to you. I feel like that's such an important piece, especially if someone is making a mistake, or if a mistake happened, to manage up. In the instance, Dale, I know it happened to you, and you're the most senior person there, so no one really had to manage up to you, but that's happened so many times, and that's something I admire, is if someone is either drowning in work or needs help, or, is at a crossroads, I always tell them the best thing they can do is manage up, come to me with a solution or with the problem, and I can help you, kind of keep it moving. And this person in particular came to me, but I think a bit too late. And so I kind of took the matter into my own hands. Luckily, we ended up figuring it out. It was fine. But that was an instance. But with interns and with some other folks that are currently on my team, I think they're doing a great job. What's tricky is my whole team kind of switched over. So we have all new people that started. So they're still kind of getting up to speed on the business, but they do a really great job of communication skills, staying on top of projects. So they haven't seen anything yet, but I feel like they're just learning the business from me and the day-to-day of how it works. And so I don't have anything to say about them, but just an old experience with a coworker.
Do you think that, because I felt like the whole world had to slow down a little bit last year, do you think that ended up helping in some way, where there was maybe some more patience given to change?
Yeah, it could have. It's funny because regardless of what happened with COVID, I know a lot of industries slowed down. We slowed down for about a day or so, where we started to figure out, all right, this campaign we're working on can't go live, this campaign can't go live. And then we just got back up and running, and we started COVID campaigns. It's crazy how quickly we pivoted, where, we had to jump on the ball and come up with social campaigns to talk about getting back out there, go through the drive-through. You could still get a drink that way, or whatever it is. We had to problem solve on our end. So I feel like with COVID, it was another layer of problem solving for our clients and trying to help them with the money that unfortunately they burned on a campaign that they couldn't run. So,
it is a little easier when it's like, I'm sure there's not, what are you going to complain about? There's a freaking global pandemic,
Yeah.
I think that's where I felt like from my side too, because I work with publishers and brands. It just seemed like people were more, when I said, just so you know, this is going to take an extra day. This is how it goes now. They were just like, yep, I get it. It wasn't, before it'd be like, oh no, gotta happen, rush it, this and that. And I was just like, yo, dude, it's called the internet. It's got to go up. It's got to come down, And all of a sudden I just felt like people were a little bit more understanding of what it takes to get this stuff made,
Definitely. I feel like our clients were very appreciative of how quickly we problem solved and got work out there, and our, creatives just quickly pivoted. It's amazing. If I were to look back at like folders from the work we did last year, it's good stuff. Like it's amazing what we did as a team to continue to get our brand back out there, because that's what every brand was doing, just given the fact that people weren't going outside. Mm. So what can we do to get people to still buy things when they're, they don't want to get a virus? It's very interesting. And it also,
I can't wait. I can't wait to look back at the content from 2020, 2021. Like, it's going to be so interesting. I wanted to share on this note of, communication. My father's going to love it if he hears this one. So he taught me clarify and verify. Okay. That's the key of communication. And it's funny because what you just talked about is that you were clear with the person and he said that he would do it. But then you lacked to verify that it was happening. And here's the thing. Some people get butthurt about that. My homegirl that works here, she knows who she is, hates when I check in on her. Dale, I did what you said, Dale. And I'm like, it's not going to stop me from making sure and asking, because stuff falls through the cracks. And we have to check and balance each other. This is the only way. If stuff falls through the cracks for me, it's going to fall through the cracks for other people. And you know that too, because you're just as detail oriented and you have your systems and your double checks and your reminders on your phone. I have reminders to drink water on my phone. Okay. So like it's very much, I understand the human condition. It's just who we are. We're gonna forget stuff. We're not, as good as the robots. Today, our new AE, I had mentioned this is kind of how the whole thing started, was he's working on one of our clients' pieces for the first time. And I had recently, I watch a lot of entrepreneurship stuff. What's happening now is I started watching a lot about how do you start to think ahead and how can we really grow exponentially? And you have to develop leaders at the company. You have to encourage leadership. And I thought, this is such a great opportunity for one of my editors, Kat, to really educate and show, this our AE Jake sort of what to do in this scenario. I said, hey, sit down with him. You're going to tell him how to do it. Make sure they know the clarity part. See, I think people are easy. I think the clarity part's kind of easy once you realize how important it is. It was in the middle of the day. I just walked by his computer, saw that he was going, and I said, Kat, have you checked in on him, Kat? She's like, no, he said he got it. And I said, that's like, Kat, clarify and verify. You got to check in on him. Every time you teach somebody something new, he's got to do 30 of these. Wouldn't you rather figure out that he's checked the first one? As soon as he's done with the first, you say, hey, let me check that first one, make sure you got it under control, and then, make sure you're good to go for the rest. And her answer was so typical. She goes, okay, I'll do that. But I was very clear with him. And he said he understood it. And I was like, not enough, Kat. That's all I have to say to her, She walks over. She's like, all right, you got it. Walks over. I'm like washing the dishes. But I can just, all I heard, and if she listens to this, she can laugh knowing that I had the biggest grin on my face. I heard her go, hey, Jack, let me see what's going on over there. Oh, you know something? I think, if you could do this, I would really appreciate it. And if you maybe could make that little tweak and relabel it this way. And I was just like, yes, you might get 90% of it, but come on, we're human. The first time you hear something, the first time you do something new, you're bound, Of course, what's Jake doing? Nodding his head. Of course, I got it. You don't have to worry about me. But then afterwards, it's like, oh my God, what does she just say, right? Like, you're young, you're trying to do all these things we're talking about. So that concept and what happens is you don't realize, hey, if you didn't even check in at all, he could have done all 30 wrong. What a bigger waste of time that is than maybe the slight awkwardness that it might be to check in on somebody. Okay, because I get it. You don't want to make them feel like they're stupid and they don't know what they're doing. That's not what it's about. Mm-hmm. It's about the fact that we're human and we're here to help each other to learn new things, and that we don't have the high pressure and expectations that you're going to be as good at it as we are, who have repeated it 1,000 times already, And I kind of hope that more people sort of take on that mentality, because that same guy, and I love him, and he's a freaking dedicated hard worker who learns and listens, ran to B&H for me today, grabbed that which is like already 15, 20 pounds, came back in the pouring thunderstorm to bring it to me. Okay, that's the kind of stuff that I appreciate, that I remember. He told me he was at an internship before this, and why he really wanted to stay with me through the summer, because he's doing he was only doing 2 days a week, and he's doing a paid internship through the summer now. He said, the last internship I was at, the first day I was there, my superior called me an idiot.
Oh my gosh. Who would even say that?
I don't know, man. But that's exactly what I'm saying. How do you expect anybody? He is not an idiot.
That's crazy.
He is.
It's also terrible management skills.
It's just like, come on. First, have some self-control, first of all. But also, how are you gonna, like, that's so short-term, like, minded to do that. And so I tell everybody, that's why I make it crystal clear when they come in, all of our people, you have the lowest expectations possible. I say, I expect that you guys suck. And I say it just like that. Don't worry about me. I expect that you suck. That's where I'm starting. So guess what? There's only one place to go. And I tell you right now, man, you can just, the relief that you see pour over them, because they laugh about it. Obviously, it's tongue in cheek. But it says to them, and then I say, so go out there and make the mistakes, man. Go. Because you have nothing to lose. It's not as bad as you think. I'm going to be here to catch your fall, and I would never put you in a position to actually hurt yourself or the company. Okay? And I feel like this is something that hearing their experiences is not happening enough with young talent that's coming up. And, when you put that kind of pressure on people, especially when they're young, you don't know how they're going to react to it. And the worst thing you could do is expect that they're going to react to it the way you do. If you're somebody like you and me, who's like very calm under pressure, we're the kind of people where, when the server's down, like if I was one of them, I'm like, let's do this shit. What do you need, bro? You want me to get out there? I'm strapping it up. I'm in the rain. Like whatever. That's just my personality. That's not how everybody reacts to stress and pressure. Yeah. And you got to be very empathetic to all those things. So I don't know. I'm curious. Obviously, you guys are you have so much more infrastructure there that I'm sure, I would hope that they're taking care of at the development side of things. But how do you feel about that? How much pressure did you feel coming in when you started a few years ago?
I mean, when I came in, I definitely felt that I needed to prove myself. But at the same time, I was also pretty damn proud of myself for getting a job there in the first place. So it was more of like, okay, at least I've made it here. I feel like the only way, like you said, the only way I could go is up. Like, at least I'm here. Now I just need to learn.
Interesting. You're practicing a bit of like you're celebrating the small wins. I mean, for you, that was a big win, but that might be something too, right? It's like, okay, I hope that for your intern who messed up the email, when she sends it right and you're like, nailed it, that they get pumped about that. Maybe that's the answer is like, well, if you're putting these incredibly high expectations on yourself as well, all you can do is not meet them, right? If you come out of film school like I did thinking, if I don't have a feature by 27, like all the, Spielberg 27, Coppola, freaking George Lucas and shit, that when you hit 27 and you don't, crippling failure, and you just beat yourself up when like it is really stupid to compare yourself to like prodigies who were extremely, who you don't know what their circumstances were at all.
Yeah.
I just think that maybe there is something to say there about celebrating the wins. I like that. I like that a lot, Melissa.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important just because you finally like made it, even just getting a step in the door. Like when I got out of college, I mean, I've said this in multiple episodes, but I was so laser focused on just getting a job. That's all I really cared about because I knew how difficult it would be and because I didn't know anyone in the field. Like I didn't have any connections, and I feel like the only way you can get in is just either by knowing someone or by working really hard or having a good resume. Like those are kind of the main ways you can get a job. And when I got in, I definitely felt a sigh of relief because having a first step in the door is just, that starts your career. I'm definitely not going to be perfect when I started, and I definitely wasn't, because you realize that college might prepare you for a lot, but they'll never prepare you for working like in your field. The only way that you'll learn is by actually being kind of thrown into it. Yeah.
Or having, or hopefully having resources like this that are actually describing real life events. I mean, I guess, to wrap this one up, we're talking about it. Just the thing to remember, guys, is yes, we're talking about getting in and really setting yourself up to embrace your mistakes so you can grow. Take note that I made a catastrophic mistake today. So even with all that practice, even with all that work that I put in, and I'm 32, homies. So, over 10 years of grinding and making a lot of other mistakes along the way. Like I know all the weird stuff about Premiere. You know what I'm saying? Somebody comes up, hey, Dale, why isn't this working? I'll never forget this one. Hey, is the extension on the file capital WAV? Why, yes, it is. Try making it lowercase .wav. I have learned not to even ask why anymore. Okay. You make that shit lowercase, bang, it works all of a sudden. It's like, what? I remember one time, this is a true story too. There must have been some bug. I downloaded some graphics from Google Mail. Okay. Gmail, it downloads as an MP4, as a zip. I put the zip onto the server. I opened the zip. There were supposed to be 4 graphics. Only 1 show up. Oh, that's odd. I tried to double click. It's weird. I thought there was supposed to be 4. Call up the production man. Hey, there's supposed to be 4, right? Yeah, there's definitely 4. Try re-downloading. And I was like, you know what? Let me at least get 1 into Premiere, make sure that it's working. Open up Premiere. Everything's offline. It's like, that's weird. All the footage is offline? Dude, still to this day, I have no idea what bug this was. But whatever that combination of things was, opening up that zip in that particular folder, wiped everything else except 100%, except for that file. I remember walking over to Kyle.
Bizarre.
Okay, and what do you think Kyle said to the first thing I said? Kyle, it's a very weird issue with the server. I opened up this MP4 file and wiped the whole media space. First thing he goes was, I'm going to be real with you. It's probably human error. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that when it says, do you want to delete everything? I didn't click yes. But that's the thing that you should start with. And what I'm talking about is an instance that was out of my control. How did I prove that it was out of my control? I actually replicated it. I put data back on the space, and then I did the same exact steps, and it wiped it again. Okay, now this is the whole promise of like having your systems and backing it up and all that, because at the end of the day, we had it on a drive, put it back on the thing. My project files were also backed up to the cloud. So yes, you lose hours to put all that footage back up, but we're talking about a day of work, okay? As opposed to the whole thing being gone. And that's what I mean, where sometimes it is out of your control. And so at the end of the day, you just got to focus on what you can. Right? Which is why, that's the whole thing here. And when those things happen, if you develop the sort of skills and if you, listen to the sort of things that we're saying about how you need to be thoughtful about it, just take the step back and just go at it with a problem-solving attitude. Definitely don't blame anybody else or anything else. Just try to solve the problem as best you can. Even when it is out of your control, I'm a stoic. That's how we roll. And like, we just are there to get the job done, no matter how bad it is. And that's why today, even though something catastrophic happened that could have lost us over a week of time, we're able to get back up and running in a day. Band-Aid solution, yes. But I think it's just such a remarkable thing, because I think most people who wouldn't have necessarily gone through the work, what if we were just minutes late and somebody else bought that one server left in the goddamn Manhattan area, like, that we could have done this with? And you know what I would have done? I would have started just opening up the circle. We would have hunted on Long Island. We would have tried to figure out whatever else you can do from there. But like, I mean, it just goes to show you, like, just how much you can do if you stay calm, and if you just try to move forward. Effort, right?
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
What a day of learning for you, man. I feel like it's all come full circle. Hopefully everyone who's listening to this.
I gotta be real. It's not like I didn't learn. Okay. I know these things. Even if you know them, I'm constantly reminded about my own flaws and, biases and mistakes. And I try so hard to fix them, of course, but, I guess that's the thing. Like, no, I didn't learn that I should be safe and shut everything down and back it all up before I do anything like that. I knew that, and I just slipped up and completely didn't see it. And not only that, everybody that was there slipped up and didn't see it too. So there's definitely a failure of clarity and why that's important, because hopefully I know next time somebody's going to say, what about the server? Okay. Well, the question is, how do we get that happening earlier in terms of the mindset of people thinking through that kind of stuff? I think is the big thing. What I definitely learned is that my team is amazing. I mean, I knew that, but like, this is probably the first time that we've all been in the same room where some crisis went down. We've had crises, but it's like remote. So it's really just me, one-on-one trying to deal with something. This was we're all together. And for the first time, I got to see who is going to crack right now. Mm-hmm. And I was, dude, man, I'm building a small but mighty. Everybody was just looked at me. And I think, it stems from the top, because maybe it's because I repeat it all the time. And then I'm telling you, you hope for the best, you prepare for the worst. That's it. Yep. And you don't have no expectations of nobody but yourself, because that's one of the few things you can control, is how you react to shit and how you handle situations. That's it. And so I try to keep it that basic. So when this happens, you know what? It's a good gut check for me too. Because obviously when I pressed the power button and I was like, this shit ain't turning on. And then I was like, Dale, man, you're about to turn around and everybody's about to be looking at you. You cannot show them the panic that's happening in here. You need to get up and you need to deliver some orders so we can move forward. And that was the hardest thing. So I took my time. I was like, I'm going to make them think I'm tinkering with this shit for a little bit longer, because I need a second here. Oh my God, yes.
You're holding yourself together. Well, I feel like everybody, I feel like this is a dumb way to end it. Hannah Montana said everybody makes mistakes and everybody has those days. I don't know if you've ever heard that song.
Who says that? You broke up on me.
Hannah Montana. There's a song.
You really going there right now?
I just quoted. Yeah, I figured for some of the female fans, since this isn't just only a male podcast, if anyone
Miley Cyrus, all right, fine. You got me. Okay. You got me.
We
You
could
got me.
listen. We could listen to that after this, but I could just say everyone makes mistakes, and everybody has those days. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Everybody makes mistakes. I think that's the line. If it's not, I apologize. But it's going to happen regardless. But the way that you dealt with it, I commend you, and the way that you turned it around into a learning, not only just for yourself, but for everyone on this podcast and for your team, I think is amazing.
Yeah, very proud of everybody today. Not an easy thing to deal with, but that's probably more to the point of just the reinforcement that we've done over the past few months to be ready for something like this. Obviously, we appreciate everybody that does tune in. We really do this because not only does it help us reflect on our own journeys as we try to grow and develop in our own masteries, but we know just how confusing and difficult it was to get into production, marketing, branding, and this entire wonderfully crazy field of advertising. So, hit us up if you have any questions. Of course, we're here to help. And I hope you guys gained something from my very unfortunate error today, and from listening to Melissa talk about it from her perspective inside a company that's been around for so long. One can only imagine the kind of mistakes they've made in their 100-year journey.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
yep. So, mad respect. I love you. I'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the CNA podcast. If this brought you any value, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You know how much it means.